Andy Austin here with the next video in Better Marketing for Coaches series. There's a pinned comment in the comment section which gives you a link to the complete playlist. I'm adding more videos most weeks, so there'll be 2 or 3 going up until really I've completed everything I have to say on the subject. Now, just to emphasize, everything I have to say is purely what I'm doing and how I do my stuff. Is this going to be applicable to anyone else? Is this going to be the way it should be done? Is this the way you should do it? I've no idea. I'm a therapist, formerly a clinician. That's what I do, and I know how I run my business. I can't really put myself in any position to be giving business advice to anybody, because it's not what I'm an expert in. But people do ask me these things, so I thought I'd share them. Now, in this one, we're going to look at niching, or for you Americans out there, niching. Niching is the American way. Who knows? Now, niching is one of those things that really gets people in a bit of a trap. When I coach coaches, and I do have coaches come to me who are struggling to basically get started with their coaching business, whatever form it's going to take. The number one thing people say is, well, I haven't got started yet because I can't decide on my niche. I'm going to disagree with the general consensus on how niching actually works. I don't think niching is important for you to get into, as that's where you make your money. I'm going to put it to you that niching is where you demonstrate your expertise. It's not necessarily where you make your money. And I think that there's cultural variances around niching as well. In America, it does seem to be very, very important to people. In the UK, people don't seem to care so much. If you're a hypnotherapist, you are by nature a jack of all trades as a hypnotherapist. And that's quite a good position to be in. You don't need a niche, because as a hypnotherapist, you're going to see driving exam phobia, you're going to see stress, nail biting, hair pulling, all of the standard fare of a hypnotherapist. And that's quite a good business to get into if you're skilled at being a generic hypnotherapist. And that's quite a good thing in itself. You make money as a generalist. Most people who have a specialty, that's not necessarily where they make the money. My specialty, the thing I know most about, schizophrenia. Don't make any money in that area, but I am able to demonstrate my expertise there. The majority of people that come to me have such a diverse range of problems. There is no particular one area I can say that is the recurring theme. Now, anxiety underlies most of the problems that people present, but very few people ever come to me to say, I suffer anxiety issues. That's very rarely the cause for them to seek help from me. So, if you're caught in the trap of, well, I don't know what my niche is yet, I haven't decided on my niche, and I don't know what my niche is going to be, I suspect you're actually displacing responsibilities from elsewhere and using the niching issue as the excuse to not get started. So basically, you've got to start somewhere, and it's just get started. However, having said all that, niching can be very useful in that it's where you demonstrate your expertise. So you don't have to have a particular therapeutic expertise to demonstrate expertise. For example, so if I were to start out now if I had to start all over again, knowing what I know now, then I would do pretty much the same thing as I did before, but I would just make it a little bit simpler. So I would become an expert, for example, in spider phobias. So I'll be a generic hypnotherapist, but I'm going to be the expert on spider phobias. Now, being able to cure the phobia isn't enough. You've got to do more than that. You've got to be an expert. So I would learn everything there is to know about arachnids. I would know their breeding habits, the geographical distribution, which countries have venomous ones, which ones don't, what are the names of those venoms, how do they affect the body, how are they treated. I would know absolutely everything there is to know about spiders, whether they bite people or not, and how people are bitten are affected, and how it's treated. I would know the names of all those drugs, and I would even potentially go and visit a specialist centre that specialises in that kind of stuff. So I have a very intimate, high-level knowledge of the subject. Merely curing the phobia, that's incidental. Everyone expects you to do that. But expertise comes from absolute knowledge of the subject. Now I'm media worthy. Now I have something I can give presentations about. If I'm going to talk about how to cure a phobia, whoopee, there's plenty of people doing that already. But if I stand in front of a group of people and demonstrate absolute expertise on all things to be afraid of with spiders, and can cure it at the same time, now I have an interesting presentation that people are going to remember. And I'm media worthy. I can book in the various groups, that the dinner clubs, the business clubs that book in speakers. I have something I can put on a website. I have a database of stuff I can put together, lots of information, so search engine domination and so forth. I'm going to demonstrate an expertise there. Now, how many people would I expect to get by percentage of clientele who have arachnophobia? Probably not very many. But people will make their symptoms fit your expertise. And this was one of the things I noticed, that when, back in the early 90s, when I was very much in the schizophrenia domain of stuff, and that's the stuff I used to talk about and present, people would phone me and say things like, yeah, I understand you work with schizophrenia and stuff. I'm not mad or nothing. I'm not mad, but I can't really sleep at night. Can you work with that? People try and make their symptoms fit your specialty. So people would have this notion, okay, so you can deal with arachnophobia. Can you deal with these other phobias? Can you deal with driving anxiety? Because that's like a phobia, isn't it? What about social phobia? Can you deal with that? And Asperger's, limitations of Asperger's, can you help me with that? People will start to generalize out your expertise into whatever area they can connect to. And because you're an expert, as opposed to a generalist, that's the word, a generalist with only superficial knowledge of any particular subject. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with being a generalist, but you do need to be able to give an expertise in something. It doesn't matter what it is. Let me give you another one. So this used to be a particularly major hobby of mine. Not so much these days as I've got older, as interests have changed, but I used to breed fish, particularly the cichlids of Lake Malawi and Lake Tanganyika. A particular genre of cichlid called Mbuna. Now, some of you who know nothing about fish are going, what did he just say? They're a type of fish from a big lake in Africa. That was my hobby, and I took it to the lateral extremes when I was younger. I used to breed them competitively and would go to fish shows. Okay, they have dog shows. We have fish shows, all right. And I used to win all sorts of awards and put them into competitions and various things. That's what I used to do. So imagine now I want to make that, I'm a hypnotherapist, and I want to make that my niche. How am I going to do that? Well, that's very easy. So I'm going to look at hospitals and medical practices that have a fish tank. I'm going to know the research on how looking at fish can alter biometric readings like blood pressure and respiration rate and galvanic skin resistance. For example, simple things easy to measure. I'm going to become an absolute expert on the psychology of what a fish tank does to an environment. I will know all of the biometric research. I will know all the data on that. I'm going to take it further. I'm also going to know a little bit about how these fish tanks operate. Now, I do, simply because I was a fish fanatic and I worked in hospitals. Here's the one thing you can be sure of in a hospital aquarium. They very rarely get fed. The water gets changed randomly, if ever. It probably just gets topped up. The filters are probably very rarely maintained, and the fish are largely neglected. Simply because you have a high turnover of staff, you have a high turnover of shift patterns, and it largely just comes down to, does anyone think of it as an afterthought? Because you've got so many people, you've got this dispersed responsibility, no one may take it upon themselves to take care of the fish. And so that can happen. Increasingly, you have external agencies looking after the tanks, but it doesn't happen everywhere. So I'm going to know all about that, the politics, the social politics of the workplace and how these fish survive. What fish are best suited to that environment? Which ones are hardy enough to live in that environment? I may well go round the local clinics, hospitals and GP surgeries and find out who's got fish tanks. I might then offer to take over the care of them. Well, once a week, once a month maintenance. Very easy stuff. Give fact sheets to the staff. Send check via email. Have you fed the fish? That kind of stuff. Make sure these things are cared for. I'm also going to ask if I can have a little brass plaque made up and put on the front of the tank. Tank supported and maintained by Andrew T. Austin, hypnotherapist, and a phone number or email address or both. That kind of stuff. Free advertising in every clinical environment that has a fish tank. I also now have an expertise. I'm seen to be an expert in something, as well as being a hypnotherapist. This gives me a platform, just like with the spider phobia, to be able to speak to groups, media, and other areas. So essentially, it doesn't really matter what your skill set as a therapist is. That is irrelevant to a client. That is irrelevant. If you go to a doctor, you expect him to know stuff. If you go to a bus driver, you expect him to know how to drive the bus and know the way. If you go to anyone who has a job title, you expect them to know how to do that job. Having a train driver come into the waiting room of the train station to impress his customers on how skilled he is as a train driver is not a good look. A brain surgeon who comes along to an appointment with his next patient who's in clinic to impress upon him how steady his hand is with the scalpel. That's not a good look. And yet, for some reason, coaches and therapists seem to think to demonstrate how brilliant you are and how high success you are is a good look. Think about it. Think about how that conveys across into the mindset of your customer, of your next client. But being able to demonstrate expertise is a different thing. And that's ultimately what the niche, that's what it serves to do. It's a demonstration of expertise. It's not necessarily where you make your money. Now, as I said before, there's a pinned comment with a complete playlist for these videos in the comment section. Do please ask any questions, leave any comments, any objections, any counter examples, any interesting niches that you have explored and found to be of use. Do please stick them in the comment section. And of course, thank you for watching this far. Do please click the like button. It really helps.
Oh!